Hello, my name is Jonathan White, and the title of my discussion is From Piety to Protest, How Puritanism Cultivated the Spiritual Soil for the Great Awakening and Stirred the Seeds of the American Revolution. The abstract is, this discussion examines how Puritanism's theological convictions and communal values cultivated a religious ethos that not only set the stage for the Great Awakening, but also influenced the emerging revolutionary spirit in colonial America. By exploring the intersection of faith, morality, and politics, it argues that Puritan thought provided the foundational principles that shaped the nation's early religious and political identity. Charles Cohan's journal article and Harry Stout's brings light onto this thought. Charles Cohan sheds light on the subject by contrasting the idea that Puritanism, which he at times calls Christianity, was in decline in the 18th century by stating, and I quote, "The logic of this declension schemes spotlight some historical issues while ignoring others," end quote. Cohan, page 554. Giving credence to this, Patricia Bonomi in her book Under the Cope of Heaven explains, and I quote, "Conditions improved markedly during the 18th century. However, as the clergy became more professional, church building quickened, attendance at services mounted, and denominational identity solidified," end quote. Bonomi, page 3. Cohan goes on to say this was a process that took time. In sum, Christianization in colonial America unfolded gradually and often contentiously, involving conversion, religious practice, and institutional growth. It also saw the rise of denominational identities, increased church participation, and active lay engagement. However, did Christianity and the Great Awakening stir the seeds of the American Revolution? Harry Stout brings this into light when he says in a bold statement, and I quote, "Contemporary and historical accounts agree that the Awakening was the most momentous intercolonial popular movement before the Revolution," end quote. Stout, page 520. He argues that the Revolution was a moral one rooted in Protestantism. Furthermore, for generations of colonists, they were educated in the language of covenant theology at home, at work, at church, and at school. They grew up in a land that was completely against absolute authority. It was this culture that became the seabed for the Revolution. Furthermore, Adam Earnhardt in Religion in the American Mind believes the revolutionary spirit in the 18th century crystallized after the Awakening by stating, and I quote, "Revolutionary styles in 18th century America, each originating in opposing rhetorical strategies that crystallized after the mass revivals," end quote. Heimert, 532. Coming into play is a generational change culminating in the second generation of colonists taking the rejection of authoritarianism into politics. Dr. Robert Schultz in the Religion and Politics video brings this into focus. And I quote, "People of the Awakening of the Revival were willing to resist ecclesiastical structures. By the same token, in the next generation, the same people of their descendants were willing to resist political structures," end quote. Schultz, time step 344. In conclusion, Puritanism prepared the spiritual and moral foundation that fueled the Great Awakening and inspired the ideals of the American Revolution, shaping the nation's early religious and political identity. Thank you.